Salve rapaziada, passando rapidinho no começo do vídeo pra você não esquecer de deixar o seu like e se inscrever no canal. E outro lembrete é que o canal Kennzy 2 é de gameplay completa. Caso você queira ver uma gameplay editada, vou estar deixando o link do canal principal na descrição, fechou? Valeu. Por dentro aí dos novos itens, dos itens que vai vir na season nova aí, ó galera. Toma. Aqui agora vai entrar na jungle, né? Beleza. Pera aí, o que foi removido? Foi o... Como é que é o nome do item que cura lá mesmo, mano? Esqueci do que ativa. Ele falou em inglês ali, deixa eu voltar pra ver. Gore Drink, o hemodrenário, né? Foi luz, ô Vieno? Legal. Poderia rushar Shojin agora, então.
Sundered Sky will actually be a very interesting pickup on Bruiser Kane because the built-in heal will provide Kane with even more extended fight power. Vi is one of the only junglers who would consistently run Divine Sunder, so
valeu, hein, Fluffers.
What will she be looking at? Experimental Hexblade has a lot of potential on Vi because so much of her strength is tied to her ultimate, and Hexblade's passive synergizes perfectly in that regard. You'll honestly have a ton of options on Vi, as Sundered Sky and Trinity Force can work great with her too. If you want to play Lethality Vi, that's still an option too, as Eclipse, the Collector, and Essence Reaver will all still be in the game. AP junglers will have a few more options to choose from in Season 14, with the introduction of Storm Surge and rework to Shadow Flame. Night Harvester is also being removed, so this will affect 3 AP junglers, in specific being Elise,
Vixe, colhedor de essência removido.
and Gragas. Rocket Belt is highly likely to replace Night Harvester and become a staple pickup on those champions. Rocket Belt will now cost 700 gold less, coming in at 2,500, and even though the stats are being lowered to compensate, having access to the active earlier on will feel really nice. A 2-item core.
Pera aí, o item vai ficar mais barato e não vai ter mais o ativo, o Protobelt, é isso, velho? Pera aí.
Rocket Belt will now cost 700 gold less, coming in at 2,500, and even though the stats are being lowered to compensate, having access to the active earlier on will feel
vai
really
ter,
nice.
né?
A 2-item core of Rocket Belt into Storm Surge is one
esse item eu tô ligado que é roubado, esse do cajado azul, ó.
because the items come together to offer a nice mix of durability and burst. The bonus damage passive proc on Storm Surge will act.
Ele vai dar 35%. Como é que é? Ah não, campeões que tiver com menos de 35%, ele vai dar um big dano, né, mano? Ele vai dar um choquinho. Ah, doido, é diferente, né? Causar 35% da vida massa dá o dano. Entendi. Ó, o item lá na Diana.
Error will be very thin since the item offers no health. Evelyn and Diana are 2 other AP junglers who will have great potential with Storm Surge. For Diana especially, she's always been a champion who's had a very easy time getting into a fight, but getting out has always been an issue. That movement speed from Storm Surge will help her get in and get out much more efficiently. Rocket Belt, Storm Surge, and Zanya's looks like a really nice 3-item core if you're looking to play Diana jungle. One item that is going to make Fiddlesticks absolutely broken is Malignance. Malignance provides AP mana and
bom pra
haste,
Fiddle
but it's the
esse aí.
passive that is OP. The passive on Malignance gives you 20 ultimate haste, and whenever you use your ultimate, you burn the ground beneath the enemy, dealing damage and reducing the enemy's magic resist. The damage procs every
E reduz a resistência, legal.
second, and since Fiddle R lasts for 5 seconds, you get 5 procs of the Malignance passive off. Just look at the background gameplay here as to how disgusting this is. Comparing Malignance to Rocket Belt, it's not even
Vamos ver o total, hein, mano. Aqui só Protobelt ali com item fechado.
close damage.
1.300, caralho, vai dar muito mais dano, hein, mano. Esse símbolozinho aqui é que tá quebrando a MR, tá ligado? Dos campeões.
As Malignance deals
1.500 quase, ali foi 1.035, caralho, 500 de dano a mais.
1628 damage as opposed to just 1035 from Rocket Belt. The fact that the Malignance passive can proc on multiple targets.
Então esse é o first item do Fiddle.
The potential is so much greater than any other item if you're able to get a multi-man R off. A Malignance rush into Rocket Belt second and then Zanya's third is looking like a pretty solid 3-item core for Fiddle. For other mage junglers like Karthus, Lilia, Talia, and Brand, what will their builds look like? For Karthus, you might be thinking, well, wouldn't Storm Surge be super broken?
Mano, no Karthus que esse item vai ser bizonho. Com certeza o Karts numa ult vai tirar 35% de vida, né, mano?
Especially as a late game pickup. We originally thought
cara
this
tiver
as
pouco
well,
low também.
but unfortunately the Storm Surge bonus damage only procs on one champion, so you can't ult with Karthus and get insane value.
É só em que
Malignant's
coisa,
passive,
né,
on the other
velho?
hand, does proc on all champions, so there's great potential with Malignance on Karthus for similar reasons to Fiddle. Talia is definitely...
Tá, vamos lá, só pra eu ver se eu entendi mesmo. Esse item vermelho aqui, galera, ele não vai diminuir o MR dos caras quando você estiver perto. Ele vai diminuir o R quando você ultar. Então se o Karts ultar lá da puta que pariu, o item vai procar tirando MR dos caras. É isso, né?
So there's great potential with
Sim,
Malignance on
beleza.
Karthus for similar reasons to Fiddle. Talia is
Então faz
definitely
os dois
a
itens
mid
pro
that
Karts
will
ali,
gravitate
pensa.
towards his companion as she gets no
Valeu, hein,
use out of
Herbert,
Malignance.
2 meses,
Remember, the
pai.
new Leandries doesn't offer any mana at all, so Brand's Season 13 core build of Leandries and Rylai's may not be viable anymore. Brand is one champ where it's not as cut and dry as to which build path he will prefer, so let us know in the comments what you guys think will be best. Rod of Ages Lilia will have a lot more viability for Season 14 since Leandries no longer offers mana. A Rod of Ages rush into Leandries and Rylai's will be something to watch out for on Lilia. AD Assassin junglers will have a few more options to choose from in Season 14, with new items introduced and old items removed. Voltaic Cyclosword is a new lethality mythic, and its passive works so that you deal bonus damage on your
Sua passiva, cadê? Para que você cause dano bônus.
first attack. And this bonus damage can be
Primeiro ataque,
recharged
né?
faster
É tipo a Draktar antiga, creio esse.
by dashing or using stealth. This will be a great snowbally rush option on champs like Rengar and Kha'Zix. Profane Hydra is the new lethality item that builds out of Tiamat, so we could see Rengar and Kha'Zix rushing the Tiamat to help with their clear. Go into Voltaic.
Ah, vai ter. Essa Tiamat azul é a Tiamat de letalidade, né, mano? Pra assassino, velho.
Cyclosword as the
Caralho.
first completed core item, and then complete
Mano, vai
Profane
ficar massa
Hydra
esse LOLzinho,
after.
velho.
Ghostblade is still in the game, so for Talon, Lethality Briar, Shaco, and Graves, they can continue rushing the item. Lethality Kayn will be an interesting one to track since Duskblade is being removed. Duskblade had been the most popular lethality item on Kayn in Season 13, so he's now going to have to decide between Eclipse and Ghostblade. Eclipse actually no longer has any lethality on it, so if you're looking to play this bursty assassin style of Kayn, Ghostblade Rush is looking like the most optimal play now. Besides Duskblade, Prowler's Claw is one other lethality item being removed, but it really shouldn't make a huge difference as there weren't any lethality junglers who were solely reliant on the item to succeed. Besides Voltaic, Cyclosword, and Profane Hydra, one other interesting new lethality mythic is called Opportunity. The passive on Opportunity is what makes it so unique, as you will gain 150 decaying movement speed over 1.5 seconds if you kill an enemy within 3 seconds of damaging them. Champions that can get in but have a harder time getting out are who should gravitate towards this one. Lethality Nocturne will have the greatest potential with Opportunity as he has no issues at all diving in with his R, but it's escaping after the fact where Opportunity will help massively. A build of Ghostblade, Axiom Arc, and Opportunity should be a really nasty 3-item core for Lethality Nocturne. Mid lane mages are going to see the biggest...
Marquinho, manda rosa, pai.
Receba, pastel. Confirmado, viu, galera? Assassino voltou firme pro
shake up
jogo,
to their
velho.
builds for any class of champions, so let's dive right in. Crown of the Shattered Queen, Everfrost, Ludens, Tempest, and Leandries are no longer the same as before. Crown and Everfrost are completely gone, while Ludens Tempest is now called Ludens Companion, and Leandries has had a bunch of its stats swapped around. Ludens Companion works very similar to Ludens Tempest, and should be the standard rush option on the majority of mages. Leandries, on the other hand, will no longer be a viable rush on mid lane mages since it no longer provides any mana. Leandries now has just AP and health for its stats, while its passive deals % health damage and ramping damage over time. So it's going to come down to Malignance, Rod of Ages, and Ludens Companion for your 3 staple rush options on the majority of mages. Malignance and Ludens provide nearly the exact same base stats, with Ludens offering 10 more AP, so it all comes down to the passives to really differentiate the two. Ludens' passive is a stacking
beleza.
damage effect that can stack up to 6 times and will detonate when dealing damage with any ability. Malignance passive is a damage over time effect that will only proc when dealing damage with your ultimate. Malignance also offers 20 ultimate ability haste on top of the bonus R damage. So mages that are more reliant on their R to be effective, like Malzahar, Anivia, Swain, will be liking Malignance the most. So then for all other
Bom pra
mages, it
boneco com
comes down to
DPS,
Rod
né,
of
mano?
Ages and Ludens, and since the items are very similar in nature to before, rush items should not change all that much in the grand scheme of things. Malz was really the only mid lane mage who was very reliant on running Leandries, but since Malignance is such a perfect replacement, he should be completely fine. A lot of other mages like Xerath, Orianna, Syndra, and Victor swap between Leandries and Ludens depending on the game, and for those champs it will be Ludens that reigns supreme now. After the first item is where things get really spicy, as this is where build variety will really thrive. You've now got Storm Surge and Crit Bloom, which are completely new options on top of all the old mage items. Storm Surge is going to be the staple second pickup on your burst mages. Remember, the passive procs when you deal 35% of the enemy's health bar within 2.5 seconds, so champions like LeBlanc, Annie, Zoe, Lux, and Syndra should all be loving Storm Surge. On your mages who deal
Imagina
dot
esses bonecos com esse item do 35%, hein, velho. É só boneco que, mano, acertou um CC, vai matar, mano. Bolha da Zoe combou, matou. Lux combou, tudo aqui, mano. Acertou o stun, vai matar com esse item, velho.
Annie, Zoe, Lux, and Syndra should all be loving Storm Surge. On your mages who deal dot damage, like Malzahar, Brand, and Cassiopeia, the new Leandries will slot in very nicely as a second or third pickup. Crypt Bloom is a bit of an odd one, as it's kind of a supporty burst item all in one. It's going to give you 30% magic pen, but then its passive is more utility focused, as it provides your team with a heal. It's a bit counterintuitive here, as you'd think that an item with Magic Pen would be more centered around bursting someone out than healing you and your team. We think this one ends up being a lot more niche and is probably purchased quite rarely unless the passive heal is just way too overtuned. For your longer ranged poke mages like Xerath, Ziggs, and Vel'Koz, Horizon Focus will be the optimal second purchase now. Shadow Flame was very staple on these champs, but it's now more of an assassin item, while Horizon Focus will fit the niche of the artillery mage much better. Ludens into Horizon Focus is the 2-item core you'll want to try on those 3. You'll get the most amount of ability haste from going this route, which synergizes perfectly when you're looking to poke and siege. Champions that can consistently burst squishy targets are going to get the best use out of the new Shadow Flame. The new passive on Shadow Flame allows you to crit when the enemy is below 35% health, dealing 20% more damage. Shadow Flame in combination with Storm Surge is going to make the lethal range for someone like LeBlanc pretty nuts. Ludens into Storm Surge and Shadow Flame is a 3-item core we can see many burst mages running for Season 14. Even as a later game pickup on someone like Xerath, Shadow Flame's passive would help a ton with sniping enemies who are low on health with Xerath R. Now, Vladimir is the only mage who ran Night Harvester as a core pickup, so with the item being removed, what does he look for now? Cosmic Drive as a rush should be a great alternative.
Olha, rushar isso aqui pra Vlad agora,
as
velho.
Vlad actually has had great success with this already in the past. There will be a bunch of mid-lane
Dá
assassins
speed,
who are
é bom pra
influenced by
ele,
the
né?
mage item changes, and one of the most notable is Fizz. Even though Fizz is an assassin, he's gravitated more towards Ludens in the past as his rush item, and that likely remains the case moving forward. The new Ludens being very similar to the old one should slot in nicely as a rush on Fizz. Fizz will actually have more one-shot potential in Season 14 because Riot has increased the AP on Zanya's from 80 to 120. Haste is gone and the item now costs 250 gold more, but 40 added AP is going to feel really nice in the mid-game for those one-shots. Nothing really changes with Kassadin, Echo, and Katarina as their core builds remain intact. Akali, on the other hand, will see a bit of a shift as the changes to Shadow Flame should lead to Storm Surge being a more attractive second pickup. Rocket Belt into Storm Surge is a 2-item core to pay attention to on Akali. Whether you want to call Vex a mage or an assassin, she needs to play more like an assassin in the later stages of the game, so we've got her grouped in here. Vex had been running Shadow Flame as a core second pickup in Season 13, so with the item changed, a setup of Ludens, Storm Surge, and Shadow Flame will be a really crazy burst build for her. As for some of the AD assassins, the introduction of Profane Hydra should be great for a few. Zed, Talon, Kiana, and Neferi are ones to watch with Profane Hydra, as the fact that they now have a Tiamat lethality pickup will be amazing for their shove and roam playstyles. To really get around the map and snowball.
Mano, o assassino, esse aqui é perigoso, galera. O assassino ter uma Tiamat, velho, vai fazer ele puxar o wave mais rápido. Puxando a wave mais rápido, ele vai poder dar mais roam e matar todo mundo, velho. Já almoçou ainda não?
The 2-item core of Profane Hydra and Ghostblade will offer a lot of strength. As for some of the fighter mid-lane champs that will be affected by the item changes, one of them is Sylas. Sylas will no longer have the option to build Everfrost or Night Harvester, which were previously his 2 rush items. This may mean that we see Rod of Ages make a comeback on the champion. Rocket Belt will be an alternative as well, and it should come down to those 2 because none of the other rushable mage items provide health. You could go Luden's Rush, but you'll be extremely squishy, which won't bode well for most games. Either Rocket Belt or Rod of Ages Rush into Cosmic Drive and Zanya's is what we expect to thrive the most on Sylas. Slotting in
Que doideira, mano. Esse vai ser um dos itens que o Silas vai rushar. Imagina os bonecos começar a rushar as zonas agora, velho.
Somewhere should be viable as well if you're looking for more burst against squishier comps. Yasuo and Yone still have access to Kraken Slayer, Hullbreaker, and Infinity Edge, and ADC items in general have not been changed all that much, so their builds should remain quite similar to before. A few of the ranged AD mids like Ukshin and Corki will see their build shift slightly for Season 14. The fact Mythics are no longer a thing means you can now build Trinity Force and Infinity Edge on Corki. This will make a 3-item core of Trinity, Manamune, and Infinity Edge super lethal, and should bring a lot more power back to Corki. We tested the new ADC on hit item called Terminus on Ukshin and compared it to Kraken Slayer, but from our tests, Kraken always wins out as a rush item. As a later game pickup, Terminus could be an option for Ukshin, but we don't see it being a rush item for him. Even though there's only one brand...
Cronômetro sai, verdade, hein, galera? O cronômetro deixou de existir? Alguém tem essa info aí?
ADC item coming for...
E vocês viram que essa atualização desse tanto de item só faz esses bonecos sumidos voltar a aparecer, né, mano? O Cork, o Fizz é um exemplo. Vai virar o item de armor, entendi.
First off, let's take a look at the new item Terminus and whether it will be a viable rush option. You get attack speed, AD, and on-hit damage, along with a passive that provides stacking armor and magic resist, and a second passive that gives stacking armor.
Já AD Carry pra mim é meio que foda-se, mas quem é AD Carry fica ligado, ó.
Everyone would expect to have great potential with Terminus. But after doing some damage tests, Blade of the Ruined King heavily wins out. With 5 auto attacks, Blade is dealing 927 damage, while Terminus is only pumping out 793. So as for a rush item, Blade is definitely going to win out.
Tá, a espada do rei dá mais dano, né?
But as you get later on into the game, that's where Terminus will slot in much better, since you'll be able to get more benefit from its ramping passive in more drawn-out fights. In those early game fights, the added upfront damage from Blade will be way more impactful to help snowball. Same thing goes for other on-hit ADCs like Varus and Callista. Terminus will be more of a late-game pickup. Now, with Gale Force gone, one champion who's affected the most by this is Jhin. If you're playing Crit Jhin, the core of Stormrazor, Infinity Edge, and Fire Cannon will be back in full force. Lethality Jhin will still be an option as well, though with Ghost Blade, the Collector, and Fire Cannon. Now, with Infinity Edge and Quick Blades no longer being mythic items, you will have the option to slot both into your build path. The question then becomes, are there actually any champions that would want to do this? As their first 2 items, probably not, but having both items eventually as a maxed out build, most definitely. Zeri, Tristana, Lucian, and Sivir are 4 ADCs that will take advantage of being able to purchase both IE and Quick Blades. General core builds for ADCs should not be changing all that much, however, the late game power of certain ADCs that can run both Quick Blades and IE will become stronger. Moving on to support now, the role is going to become so much stronger and have way more agency in Season 14. Your starting item will be the exact same for every single champion. However, once you finish upgrading it, you'll be able to choose a unique effect to cater to the champion you're playing. Zaxxak's Realm Spike is going to be the major poke support upgrade, as it will deal bonus damage when you hit an enemy with an ability. Bloodsong is the AD support upgrade, as it will have the Spellblade passive, which enhances your next attack after using an ability. There's a second part to Bloodsong as well, as you will actually increase the damage your teammates deal when you hit the enemy with a spell. Solstice Slay will be the melee engage support upgrade.
Acho que é tipo a... Como é que é o nome daquele item rosinha? Mandato, né? Esse aqui é tipo mandato. Você vai marcar o cara, seu time vai dar mais dano, né?
Deal when you hit the enemy with a spell. Solstice Slay will be the melee engage support upgrade, as you'll gain bonus health and movement speed when you immobilize or slow an enemy. Your ally also gains the bonus movement speed, so forcing all-in plays with this upgrade will be extremely easy. Dreammaker is the enchanter support upgrade, as healing or shielding allies will reduce
esse é pras fadinhas,
and also provide them with bonus magic damage on hit. Celestial Opposition is the 5th upgrade, and this one will be more viable on a wider range of champions. It's similar in nature to the old Crown of the Shattered Queen passive, where you will take
muito suporte maluco vai voltar, mano.
And then when this damage reduction wears off, you'll slow the area around you by 50% for 1.5 seconds. This one could rival Solstice Slay on melee engage supports, as having that damage reduction when diving in will be very useful. Squishy enchanters could get good use out of Celestial Opposition as well into comps that have a bunch of assassins. So with the starting items covered, let's talk about a few of the more big ticket support pickups. Even Shroud and Radiant Virtue are being removed for Season 14, so this will cause a shift in priority for melee supports.
Pior que Virtude ir embora eu gosto, eu acho esse item muito roubado, velho.
Locket is still in the game, so many will diverge back to that. However, there is a new tank support item called Trailblazer. Trailblazer is basically the Dead Man's Plate for supports, as you gain armor, health, and movement speed, while the passive provides bonus movement speed for not just you, but your ally as well, and once you get the movement speed to max stacks, your next auto will slow the enemy. So since Locket offers both magic magic
slow
resist
também,
and
né?
armor, it will likely be the cookie cutter pickup on all melee supports. However, in games where the enemy comp is very heavy AD, Trailblazer will be the main rush item. Maokai and Bard are two champions who will most definitely love Trailblazer, but we can see many other melee supports picking it up as well. Another change that will benefit melee supports is that Frozen Heart will be more catered to supports, as its cost is dropping from 2,700 to 2,300 gold. The item will have the exact
Vai ser muito barato, mano. 2.300. Se o item for o mesmo, fudeu,
same
já.
stats, but just lowered
É
a
o
bit to
mesmo
compensate for
stats.
the cost reduction. If you're playing against a very heavy AD enemy composition, we can see the two-item core of Trailblazer and Frozen Heart being extremely powerful. For Enchanter supports, there is one new item addition called Dawn Core. This one will actually be the most expensive support item at 2,700 gold and give you AP, haste, and base mana regen. Your base mana regen will be converted into heal and shield power and AP. You'll also gain 18 summoner spell ability haste. Dawn Core feels like a bit of a trap because its base stats are no better than supports items that cost 2,200 gold, while the passive seems a bit underwhelming. It's hard to say until we actually see this item on live servers as to how powerful it will be, but it's another option for enchanters. One other support item change that will affect enchanters and mage supports is the removal of Chemtech Putrefier and the mini rework to Morello Namicon. Morello will now be more of a support item and will actually be gold efficient for Season 14, as it's going to cost 2,200 gold, give 90 ability power and 15 ability haste. Of course, it will have the Grievous Wounds passive as well. From the base stats alone, Season 14 Morello is over 100% gold efficient, while the Season 13 iteration of Morello was only 93% efficient. Chemtech Putrefier cost 2,100 gold and only gave you 35 AP, so the fact you're getting 90 AP for
Boa tarde,
2,200 gold
Marquinhos.
is going to
Tudo
feel
bom?
really nice on a lot of mage supports now. Someone like
Na paz, Diego, obrigado pelos 15 meses, hein, meu lindo. O Morello vai estar mais barato e eficiente para suporte, é isso?
Zyra, who can easily proc the Grievous Wounds passive, should be loving the new Morello in games where the enemy comp has lots of healing. So overall, a ton going on in the support role for Season 14, and all these changes should only make the role even better than before. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about skill cap.
Beleza,
So,
deu pra
we
ficar
operate
informado, hein,
5
mano. Gostei, galera. Deixa eu mandar o link aí pra quem